This week we fly from Beijing to Hong Kong to Cairns to Melbourne. Yes, this could have been one easy and direct flight, but where's the fun in that? We're flying Cathay in economy for most of this, and look, we'll touch on that experience, but the overarching idea or message that I want to put forward here is that Australia, it's a goofy place. Despite some of you thinking I'm European, I am indeed Australian, and whilst I'm generally proud to call this place home, it's got its quirks. Tall poppy syndrome, weird governments, strange internet infrastructure. We'll touch on it all and more in this video. Let's get into it. We're starting this one in a bit of a weird spot. I had a few hours to burn before my flight, so why not do some shopping in a random mall in Beijing? I was expecting to maybe find some bargains, but here's the thing about Beijing, or at least the rich side of Beijing. They're rich, like rich. They had multi-$1,000 jackets here, which are just a bit out of my price range. So instead of shopping, I decided to settle for some lunch. But whilst I was slurping away, I came across this. The big news broke. Mike Cannon-Brookes, one of the founders and current CEO of Atlassian, has a private jet. Can you believe it? A billionaire has his own plane.
Oh my God! Wow!
No, this really shouldn't be shocking news to anyone, but there's two things here that really piqued my interest. Firstly, it's the jet itself, and secondly, it was the media's response to this whole ordeal. I'm not sure if you guys saw this video I did a year back with Yasin when we flew a small plane into Sydney Airport. Or well, Yasin flew the plane, I was just there with cameras. But in Sydney, we spotted this very fancy and expensive private jet, and I, of course, said this.
So it may indeed still be owned by VistaJet, and all they were doing was moving the registration to the US, but we'll never really know.
Yeah, well, turns out 6 months later, we would know. This is, of course, Mike Cannon-Brookes' new jet. This jet has a pretty storied past, so make sure you go and watch that Sydney video to get the full backstory. But this article from the AFR led to a litany of stories calling him a hypocrite and a greenwasher. What's the backstory here? Well, Mike Cannon-Brookes is one of the founders of Atlassian, the company behind Jira, Trello, Confluence, etc. And I'm sorry if this has caused some PTSD for some of you in the crowd. Over the years, he has become a major climate activist. He has been a vocal advocate against Australia's coal-fired power plants. He became the largest shareholder in energy company AGL in a move to force them to decarbonize more quickly, and he's personally pledged over $1.5 billion towards climate projects. To some degree, him flying around in one of the biggest and nicest private jets available today isn't a great look, is it? Especially as this comes at the same time that Atlassian became the title sponsor of the Williams F1 team. F1 is hardly a green sport, but Cannon-Brookes addressed all of this in a LinkedIn post that was rather incredibly released just hours after the AFR article was published. In it, he explains how he believes that F1 can and will set a global standard in sustainability in sports, and how he is using direct air capture technology and sustainable fuels in order to make his private jet travel not only carbon neutral, but according to him, net carbon negative. This rapid response, the resulting public backlash, and well, the fact that he was hiding his ownership of the jet through a complex legal structure, I think, to some degree, highlights Australia's rampant tall poppy syndrome. This is the long-running Australian reflex to chop down anyone who seems to stand out above the crowd. Anyone who seems to be a bit too flashy. That is, of course, everyone except for Adrian Portelli for some reason. There were headlines for days. Like, sure, it's ironic, but let's manifest. When I have billions of dollars, I'll be doing almost exactly the same thing. Who doesn't want to sponsor an F1 team and fly around in a private jet? I mean, look, maybe I have a bad take on this situation. Maybe he is truly the devil, but at the end of the day, he is still one of Australia's biggest climate activists, and he isn't just talking the talk, he's committing huge amounts of capital towards the issue. It really doesn't help that in the same week that this story dropped, Scott Farquhar, the other founder of Atlassian, was stuck in Hawaii after his commercial Qantas flight was diverted due to a medical emergency. In Beijing Capital Airport right now. This is the older of the two Beijing airports. I think I've talked about this in other videos, but yeah, it's the older of the two, but it's not exactly old. I think it was built for the 2008 Olympics. It's very new, it's huge, it's nice. So we're flying today from Beijing to Hong Kong, and then I'm doing Hong Kong, Cairns, and then Melbourne. But I want to talk specifically about why am I in Beijing? Well, it was cheap, mostly. Let's get into that. Without explaining my entire trip to you. Basically, I was in Hong Kong, flew to Beijing for a day, and then flew home to Australia, passing once again through Hong Kong. But why not fly directly from Hong Kong? Well, I did want to try Cathay's new Aria suites, but flying one way from mainland China in economy is significantly cheaper. Obviously, this requires getting to China, and Beijing is a bad example here. But let's look at some numbers and a better example. If I pick a random date in, say, September, and look at Cathay flights, economy between Hong Kong and Melbourne will be about $900 one way. Not particularly cheap. But if we head 140 kilometers northwest to Guangzhou, say on the high-speed rail, the price all of a sudden drops down to under $500. You're connecting onto the exact same Hong Kong to Melbourne flight, but it's almost half the price. It's even a bit more extreme for Beijing. It's only $453 for the same date. Airline pricing algorithms are complicated. Also, isn't it just pretty ridiculous that Cathay operates a flight between Guangzhou and Hong Kong? It's 136 kilometers between the two airports. Also, if you're ever in China, make sure you try mandarins here. They're incredible. I said this to my housemate when I got home from China last time, and he's like, why do you think it's called Mandarin? The language? They're really, really good. Okay, that one wasn't quite as good as the others I've had, but still, they're still really, really good here.
Second floor.
Is it cool they dispense hot water and cold water? China's just out here living in the future. I'm too bored. Hello, welcome. I'm in Hong Kong. I'm in the Wing first class lounge. Yeah, this was supposed to kind of look like that Margot Robbie shot in The Wolf of Wall Street, but I realized my bubbles look kind of gross, and let's cut the cameras. I gotta get out of the bath. This place is rather incredible, isn't it? You have a bath, a shower with a crazy rain head, got a private toilet. Absolutely incredible. It is so good to wear shorts again. I've been in Europe and America for the last month. It has not been above about 10 degrees. It's like 23 right now. We're going to Australia. I think in Melbourne, when I land, it's going to be like 35 degrees Celsius. Well, there it is. That one? Okay. I think fourth on is might be my best yet. Yet to be the first on. Home sweet home.
Okay. If you need anything, just ask me. Once I get back from your book, I give you a wow.
I know, I got a lot of... Thank you very much, I appreciate it. So when you fly Cathay Pacific and you've got status, it's quite good. I've got 3 bottles of water. I've been welcomed twice by, I think, the cabin manager and then the economy manager. He came and told me this is a very short flight and if I wanted to eat or not. I was like, yeah, because I'm obviously hungry. And he's like, which one do you want? And I think he's sort of implied that he's going to bring it out first. I'm going to be getting my fried rice soon, I guess. I've got a free seat next to me, though to be fair, the cabin is very empty. There's free rows everywhere. I mean, I was kind of hoping to grab a 4 in the middle, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. Okay, so this isn't really going to be a review of the actual seat or anything, but really quickly, 30 seconds. I think the entertainment system on the A330s isn't quite as broad as what they've got on the 777s. It's pretty much like a reduced selection. Thanks. I just got another bottle of water, so we're up to 4 now. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's getting ridiculous. Insert the Kanye West meme. And look, the seat's relatively comfortable. I've got it fully reclined right now. It's actually pretty good. I might actually be able to get some hours of sleep here. We'll see. They just brought around water, as I just said, but I think the meal service is going to happen very soon. Oh, thank you. The seatbelt sign literally came off 2 minutes ago, and we've been in the air for under 15 minutes. That's incredible. Incredible. all around, all of the flavors are just being masked by the incredible level of spice, but I'm hungry, so I'm just going to endure. Just feel a little bit awkward eating well before everybody else in this cabin. That was pretty good for economy. Pretty good. Quite tasty. I liked it. I liked it a lot. This is the toilet. It's fine. It's a bit old, this plane, but it is nice that they include a hand cream just in economy. That's not normal. You don't usually get hand cream in economy. Yeah, that's like a full service, nice airline thing to do. Overall, I quite like Cathay. In economy, in business class, all around, Hong Kong airport, great. Anyway, bedtime. So why in the world is Cathay Pacific flying to Cairns of all places? As we can see, this flight is hardly full. Are they stupid? Do they not like money? No, of course not. The Queensland government is paying for it. This particular flight was one of many that was at least partially funded by the Attracting Aviation Investment Fund. The AAIF is a $200 million investment launched by the Queensland government in 2022. The goal of this fund was to incentivize airlines to launch services to the state, especially in the post-COVID era. A lot of the Australian states have been doing this post-COVID, but I want to make it clear here that this isn't just a COVID thing. These funds existed pre-COVID too. This particular iteration of the fund has led to the resumption, launch, or increase of service on 42 routes to Queensland. Now, subsidizing air travel is hardly a new thing. This is what practically launched commercial passenger air service back in the day, and it's still incredibly common today. The US has the Essential Air Service, Europe has airport incentive schemes, China's local authorities commonly subsidize newly opened routes, and let's not even get into the petrostates and their government-owned airlines. But the thing I want to touch on here is how Australia's state-based incentive schemes are counterproductive, not just in their structure, but also overall for the great nation of Australia. Let's start with why they are, in my opinion, at least a terrible idea. We'll mostly touch on Queensland's fund here because it's the largest and most aggressive, but a lot of these ideas apply for the other states' funds as well. There are two main issues here. Firstly, they cause market distortion, overcapacity, and are not really sustainable. And secondly, they're creating regional competition between states. Let's first start with this market distortion point, and an example that's very close to my heart. Virgin Australia's short-lived Cairns to Tokyo route. I took this flight last year, made this video about it, and well, it turns out I was kinda wrong in my overall analysis of the situation. In that video, I speculated that the only reason Virgin Australia chose to operate this rather goofy 7-hour 737 service was to keep their incredibly rare slots at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. They were willing to lose money here in the short term because these slots are worth millions. Well, it turns out this service was also being subsidized by the AAIF, and well, Virgin has now cancelled this route, probably due to the funding running out. This was also probably the case for AirAsia X's Gold Coast to Kuala Lumpur route. This one was launched with much appreciation for the AAIF and cancelled just over 18 months later. I'm saying probably here because when these routes get launched, the Queensland government makes a big fanfare about how this is another win for the AAIF. But when the airlines end these routes, they are just blaming general market conditions, not directly mentioning any cut in government funding. And unfortunately, we don't know the details of these agreements as they fall under commercial in confidence clauses. The AAIF runs from 2022 through to the end of 2025, so who knows if these are 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year deals. I suspect that each of these deals is unique in nature and that higher value routes get sweeter, longer lasting deals. In any case, it appears that these programs lead to routes being operated that are economically unviable, and I think the case is most clear with routes that have started operating between Brisbane and the US. Back in 2019, pre-COVID, if you wanted to fly between Brisbane and America, your only options were Qantas and Virgin Australia on their services to LA. But today, all of the big 3 US airlines fly to Brisbane. United started flying from San Francisco and LA. Delta started flying from LA. American Airlines is flying from Dallas and LA. And well, whilst Virgin Australia went kaput, Qantas is still flying their Brisbane to LA route. The number of seats available to the US from Brisbane has gone from something around 18,000 a month in 2019 2019 to over $31,000 a month in 2024, all thanks to the AAIF. It's becoming a case of overcapacity. The demand for these services is just not there, at least on that LA route. Back in pre-COVID times, flights between Brisbane and LA, i.e. those Qantas and Virgin Australia flights, were generally around 80 to 85% full. But after this ramp up in capacity, the carriers are now seeing load factors of just above 70%, with United being the worst off here, with load factors dipping below 50% towards the end of 2023. And this is just not sustainable. I think that once these subsidies run out, we'll see huge cuts in these US services. And this gets us into the regional competition. Brisbane has seen a huge increase in the number of seats to the US, but thanks to some excellent analysis from the Analytical Flying blog, we can see here that the scheduled seat capacity between Australia and the US from December 2023 to December 2024 has actually dipped, with Sydney and Melbourne seeing a reduction of frequencies and a downsizing of planes on their routes. And this is my main issue with this whole thing. If Tourism Australia wanted to implement their own AAIF, if they wanted to start subsidizing flights to Australia in order to boost tourism, then be my guest. Distribute the money in a way that leads to all of the cities getting more services. Make my airfares cheaper when I fly out of here, please. But these state-based funds just end up redistributing airline capacity between our major cities. It's a dumb use of money. Queensland is not alone here. New South Wales has their own smaller version. Victoria, whilst not having an announced fund per se, actively works with airlines. Some examples here are Turkish Airlines, LATAM, China Southern and Air India. They work with them to introduce services to Melbourne. South Australia has a program that's lured Cathay and United Airlines to introduce services to Adelaide. WA has their own version of the AIF. They were able to lure Emirates into launching double daily services and South African Airlines into resuming their Perth to Johannesburg route. I think the funniest example is Tasmania's little $5 million fund. They're trying to spur on international routes from Hobart Airport. Yeah, good luck. Overall though, I think this is just becoming an exercise in airline welfare. And so finally, let's return back to this Cathay flight to Cairns. This is probably one of the more reasonable routes that have been funded by the AAIF program. Cathay Pacific has a history of flying to Cairns. They've been doing it since 1993, but they suspended their service to the city in October of 2019, citing commercial reasons, i.e. a lack of demand. But it's been brought back as a seasonal service operating 3 times a week from December of 2024 through till March of 2025. It's July now, this has all happened, so was this a success or another AAIF one-off? Well, let's do some back of the napkin math here to try and figure this out. It's reported that almost 16,000 people flew the 90 flights operated for this seasonal service. That comes out to 178 people per flight. They were operating an A330 here. The one that I was on had 293 seats. So my rough guesstimate is that these flights, on average, were 61% full. That's not great. I did some more back of the napkin math with Cathay's financials, and I'm guesstimating that their break-even load factor is around 70%. Of course, cargo on this route could be a big factor, but it's also probably lacking in a lot of premium traffic. So I think it's fair to say that these flights were barely break-even, if not a loss-making exercise for Cathay. So they're not going to continue this again next summer, right? No, of course they are. Cathay's signed up again for another summer season, of course with the assistance from the AAIF. So I guess I owe a big thank you to the Queensland taxpayers for my pretty cheap flight here and the many spare seats that allowed me to indulge in the old poor man's business class.
I will need a lot of coffee today. Oh my god. I think we got maybe around an hour of sleep there. Serving the breakfast 2 hours before landing was very aggressive. The crew are delightful. I am probably getting special service. Yeah, they're just super helpful and friendly. So yeah, still a fan of Cathay, despite not getting any sleep. So I've just had to unplug my phone because that's just like the rule coming into land. Just to make a point about the USB chargers on planes, this is an incredibly slow one, 2.5 watt. My phone, when we boarded last night, like 6 hours ago, we've got 23 minutes remaining now. We've been in the air for just over 6 hours basically. When we boarded this flight, my phone was on 11%. It was low. I need to plug it in. It's on, somewhat ironically, 69%. Like if you just need to charge your phone overnight, it's not good.
There's been a bit of congestion at the airport.
It's Cairns Airport. What congestion? It is a beautiful day in Cairns. It is about 100% humidity, I reckon. Oh, I think it's like a 5-minute walk to the domestic terminal. I think the hoodie might have to come off. I've secured a trolley. It's still not looking good, bruv. Alright, I think we can go around this way and then it's kind of undercover. Okay, shall we run? It's that sort of rain that you get soaked instantly. Alright, I think it's undercovered for the rest of it. It's a very beautiful airport. Very beautiful part of the world, really. What is that plane? It's like an all-black jet.
Last time I was in Cairns, funnily enough, for that Virgin Australia Tokyo flight, I saw the National Geographic jet. This is a 757 that operates very expensive world tours. Well, through some miraculous timing here, this black jet just happens to be the Four Seasons jet. It's an A321LR that is used for very similar and expensive world tours.
Huh?
If anybody has any contacts at either Nat Geo or Four Seasons and wants to do a brand deal, please email. The flight home to Melbourne was incredibly standard stuff, but I do want to throw in a quick honourable mention for the Qantas Wi-Fi. It's up there with the best non-Starlink satellite internet out there. This might be a big call, but it might be the best thing to come out of the NBN. For all of the non-Australians out there, the NBN is our national broadband network. This thing got turned into a political football, and it's left us with fairly mediocre and expensive internet when compared to the rest of the world. But due to the remote nature of some of our citizens down under, and well, the fact that this was a government program, so no man could be left behind, the NBN spent something north of $600 million launching 2 geostationary satellites that would provide space internet for the folks living out in the bush. Oh, and well, Qantas jets domestically. Problem is, it kinda sucks. On a plane, it's decent, but if this was your only internet option, it would be rough. And for many, this was the case. Or at least it was up until 2021 when Starlink was launched in Australia. This graph kinda tells that whole story. We all probably have an idea of how fast Starlink is, how much better it is versus traditional space internet. I've touched on the latency issues arising from the different orbits in past videos, but I do want to mention throughput here because I've been reading about it and some of the numbers really surprised me. The NBN satellites, there's 2 of them, have a designed capacity of 135 gigabits per second. This, spread out over 82,000 customers, isn't great or even really usable at peak times. For reference, Viasat, one of the biggest satellite internet providers out there, have a total throughput of around 1.4 terabits per second over all of their satellites. That's significantly better, but still not great if you have tens or hundreds of thousands of people using it all at once. But now Starlink, the big dog. I didn't quite realize how big this dog was. 5 terabits per second. That's the total throughput being added to the network every week. They are constantly launching new satellites. The entire Starlink network has a throughput of roughly 450 terabits per second. Here's those numbers on a chart, and now here's those numbers on a real chart that doesn't use a log scale. Yeah, at this point, Starlink is space internet. Either way, I was glad on this day that the Australian government decided to spend that $600 million on those satellites because it meant that I could stream in standard def the Melbourne F1 qualifying live. I hope you all enjoyed this rather Australian-centric video. If you've got a spare second, go follow me on Instagram here. Go follow me on LinkedIn here. I keep on saying it, but I swear I will become an ironic LinkedIn influencer soon. Go check out flightformula.com. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.
Simon? Is that Simon?
What's Simon?